Welcome back to Chamber Exchange, the TV show, in our final segment. And before we begin that segment, we will thank our sponsors, Bank Hometown and St. Vincent Hospital, for helping make this show happen. And in our final segment, I want to welcome Albert Surabian, who is a realtor for SurabianandSons.com. But before we get into it, I think you've got a message you want to send.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. Yeah. Well, before we get started, today's my 15-year wedding anniversary. So if you're watching, which I know you are, I just want to say happy anniversary. I love you. And it actually reminds me of Rocky 1 and Rocky 2. Before the fight, he goes, "Yo, Adrian, it's me, Rocky." So,
well, that's a first in all my time taping this show. We've had a wedding anniversary shout out, but appropriately so. So congratulations, Albert, to you and your bride.
Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate it.
Good. Well, maybe we could talk. We're going to get into a little bit of the state of real estate right now, and on the residential side. Yes. But maybe you could talk a little bit about your company.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm brokered by a company called Realtor, and they're the largest publicly traded real estate brokerages in North America. Mm-hmm. So before we get really into like what that means, I just wanted to kick off with saying, in my opinion, buying and selling a home is really a byproduct of what we do. And what I mean by that is, my goal is to let people feel so comfortable when they're around me about themselves and the choices that they make and the services that I bring to them, and that's where the value comes. Because at the end of the day, the goal that they want is to buy and sell the home. Mm-hmm. And my job is to make sure that they feel a strong connection with the services that we offer.
That's right, right. So you're working closely on a decision that is arguably, for most individuals or families or couples that buy a home, it's the single biggest financial investment.
Yes.
So you want to have that confidence and communication level.
Yes, absolutely. Just want to make sure that they feel comfortable, they feel confident, and a connection, and can trust all those factors, and that we understand each other, and I understand what they want, what their goals are when it comes to either buying a home or selling a home, because everybody's time frames and motivations and their purpose is going to be different.
Right, right. So what is that process that usually, someone makes that decision when to buy or sell? How do you engage, and then how does your company and the brokerage that you have help in that process?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So there's a lot of different steps for buying a home and then selling a home. And one of the questions that I typically like to ask people, because I do run my business like a real estate practitioner, licensed realtor, and there's a code that we go by. And a question that I commonly ask a buyer or seller is, has anybody taken the time to explain some of the nationwide changes that have impacted the real estate industry as a whole? And some people might have heard on the news or the headlines, but they won't really understand clearly what it means for them. Let me give an example. If somebody says, "Albert, I worked with you 3 years ago, and we bought a house with you. Now we just saw a house on 123 Main Street. When we want to go see and buy a second home, can you show me tomorrow at 6 o'clock? Well, has anybody taken the time to walk you through what it takes to buy a home in today's market? As of August 17th, 2024, there's new changes that take place. And one of those changes is we now have to have a written contract between the buyer and the agent in order to see a home. Never mind see a home, to provide real estate services to the consumer or even my past client. Even if they're like, yeah, we want to use you, we know you, we like you, we trust you, we know you're going to work out in the best interest of us, we still have to have a contract in place. So that's one of the biggest changes, right. and that's one of the things that we discuss when we go through the motions in the process of seeing a home, for example.
Right. So that probably even impacts open houses and things like that?
Yep, it impacts a lot of different things for people. But again, it's just taking a step back and really asking the right questions for those people, and then explaining a little bit. And one of my coaches told me years ago that when you tell, you repel. So it's nice to be able to ask deep-rooted questions on really what their focus is, what their goal is, and then going from there on how we can actually benefit them.
How many bedrooms? What's the long-term play? Those types of things.
Absolutely. How long do you plan on staying in the house? Do you have any special needs? Do you have any kids? Do you have any school systems that are important to you? There's just a wide range of questions that I need to ask in order to fully commit and deliver my services that I've been trained and coached on over the years and educated on. And by the way, I've been coached since I began real estate, and had my license for the last 9 years.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. So you'd have to live under a rock for people to not know that both locally and nationally we're going to have a housing crisis, and that has to do with just the volume of new housing starts, both single-family, multi-unit, just not keeping pace. And so there's a real demand. Costs have gone up. Sounds like there's some talk more recently that things are slowing down a little bit. What's the state of the play if you're a buyer or a seller?
well, that's a good question again. The real estate market in New England, because it varies depending on where you live, is literally on fire right now. So if you're a seller, it's a very strong seller's market. If you're a buyer, there's good news because the interest rates are now lower now than they were back in April of this year and last year. So now that increases buyer demand if you're a buyer, but that's also going to raise the value of homes. So when is the best time to sell a home and buy a home? Answer, when you're ready. Right? It's when you're ready. So if your only focus is to sell at the highest, most amount of money and you have no place to go, then sell your home when there's the lowest inventory levels. Maybe you can time it just right, which now is a good time. The reason for that, most people tend to be waiting for after the election, right? And it's the same thing we hear every 4 years, right? And then, or waiting until spring. So when there's more homes being listed in the springtime, that means that there's more choices for buyers to make. Okay, so here's the thing that I would recommend for somebody. If you have to sell and buy a home and preferably want to do that at the same time, my recommendation for those might be to list when you're at a low inventory to get your home under agreement because there's less competition or inventory for buyers to choose from. And then as inventory grows, typically in the springtime, your home is already under agreement. Now you have more options to choose from, and you get to tell the seller, my home is already under agreement.
Gotcha. So there you go. So we've just got a minute left. I think you've laid out some of the thought processes. If someone has more questions or want to learn more about potentially engaging with you to list or buy, where can they go to learn and contact you?
Sure. Like you said from the beginning, you can go to my website, Surabianandsons.com. My first name is Albert, last name Surabian, 508-981-7227. That's my personal cell phone number. And you can feel free to reach out to me if you want to learn more about the services that we offer to our buyers and sellers and anybody that's looking to get involved in the community.
Right. Well, good stuff. Albert Surabian, thank you for joining us and getting the word out there and keeping us posted on the market. And happy anniversary.